After the market value of Research in Motion plunged more than 70% in a year, shareholders pushed for a management shakeup. The recent resignation of RIM's co-CEOs shows that a dose of investor activism can make big changes. It seems these fights, though, are becoming more common. Brad Allen is the Senior Vice President of Laurel Hill Advisory Group. Great to have you here.
Thanks, Amanda.
It's not just, of course, Research in Motion, but another quite well-known and iconic Canadian name, CP, also facing a kind of a shake-up or attempted shake-up in the boardroom. Is it becoming more common, or is it just that these are so high-profile that they catch our attention?
From our perspective, in dealing with these regularly, it's becoming more common, but the profile has definitely raised the interest of people when you have companies like CP and BlackBerry or RIM now involved in these things. More people are taking a look at that, and I think it consequently will cause boards to take a look at themselves and realize nobody's untouchable.
So let's walk through the process in terms of what your firm does and what your actual mandate is. Let's say I'm a CEO of a company. My stock's dropped 70%. I don't want to get whacked. I don't want my board to get shot by my investors. Everybody's unhappy with me. What do I retain you to do?
Well, basically, we run elections. That's the way I think is the easy analogy that I tell my kids and my mom, so I figure that's a good barometer. So we advise our clients. They come up with the strategy with respect to what the message is. We determine and ascertain what the constituency is, how best to communicate that message to the constituency, do polling to see whether or not it's being received and if we need to adjust the message, and then determine what the results are and try and influence that communication and influence the shareholder.
Now, what is the most common driver of a shareholder's willingness to go with an activist? If you've lost 70% of the stock value, are you still loyal? And does it matter? Does goodwill matter? Does, you know, how iconic the brand is? How do the emotions of this play in? Because when you say an election, I mean, it really does come down to who you like best in the end.
It does, and when your portfolio gets hit, when you get the envelope in the mail each month, that tends to definitely increase shareholder activism. So the loyalty that you may have had dissipates quite rapidly depending on what the returns have been or not been over the, you know, and it's short-term memory effect as well a lot of times with respect to investors. So there's always a rise in shareholder activism when there's sort of general economic uncertainty or investor uncertainty and stock market poor performance. It's an inverse relationship.
So if I really distill what you're saying, it boils down to what I've always known to be true. The only thing that matters is money, and when you lose it for people, they get really, really mad at you.
If you lose it for an extended period of time, I like to think that you know, everybody can have a blip over a quarter or a year, and it doesn't mean necessarily you should throw the bums out, as they say, but if you have basically on a comparative basis, on a pure analysis, if you're definitely underperforming, you've been doing it for an extended period of time, management and board seem entrenched.
So there comes a time, and let's try and put, because you see all these cases all the time, let's try and frame it. How long before they take you out behind the barn and shoot you if the stock goes down? When you get a year, you get 6 months, what do you get?
I don't know if I'd put a metric on that, but I got to think it's shortening. It's definitely come down to probably within 1 to 2 years. I'd say under 2 years for sure.
So let's talk about what this means for other investors and whether activism is actually good for the long-term value of a firm. And I know that may be hard to measure. There have probably been tons of studies done over time, but the CP one's an interesting one because, you know, there's obviously an issue. Ackman at Pershing has taken a big position in the company. He's a sizable shareholder, so he wants a place on the board. That seems fair. But the board is backing the CEO and saying, we're sticking with our guy. At what point do they have to say, okay, well, you own enough stock that, you know, you get a voice? Yeah,
exactly. And typically, I think the wrinkle with the CP situation is sort of the tag on with the CEO being part of the deal, i.e. the CEO's got to go. If you have a normal board fight, it's typically strategy on strategy, board members on board members. Then once you get in, then you take a look and decide what it is you need to do to fix the company. You expel some of that leading up to it. The difference with this fight is that it comes with sort of the hitch that, okay, if you elect my board guys, we're getting rid of the CEO. And the question is whether, as this campaign unfolds, whether or not the board is going to be able to continue to support their existing, you know, Fred, whether Fred is going to be able to maintain the support of the board through the entire process. You know, it's going to be a challenge for CP moving up. Ackman's been out. He's definitely hitting the PR machine hot and heavy.
His message is very simple to me as a shareholder, and I'm going to question you on it if you were working for the other side. He's saying, just look at the income statement and balance sheet of CP, compare it to CN in the same market, and look how inefficient and poorly run CP is. All we have to do is take the CEO and shoot him and put anybody else, including a goat, in there, and we'll get more numbers out. We'll get a better result. That's a very powerful message. Why do I care about Fred, Ted, or anybody? I just want to make money. So why isn't that going to work?
Well, there's the arguments, obviously, that has been espoused with respect to CP and CN being two different beasts within the same industry, and there being some environmental factors as regards to why CP has necessarily underperformed and CN has overperformed. But when you take out Fred and put in Hunter as sort of as the current indicator of what Pershing wants to do, it's all rolling on him to do it. You know, I wouldn't want to back the goat, as you say, but you know, Hunter's got a compelling argument, or I should say, Ackland's got a compelling argument in putting Hunter in there. It's interesting to note, though, last year's elections wasn't that long ago for board members, and typically when we would see vote returns for non-contested elections, you might be in the mid-90s, mid to high 90s. Every director of CP 6 months ago, whenever their meeting was, had 99+%. Nobody was under 99%.
So they then had the support of investors.
They had the support. In the last 2 years, it's been over 99% for every director.
Do activists, by definition, have a short-term time horizon? And when I talk about the value of a company and whether they're good or bad, are they, by definition, looking at a fairly short term, and therefore we take them with a grain of salt?
You know, that's a label that sort of has been attached to them, and there are examples of that, which is, you know, to some extent it has been deserved, but it's not always the same in all cases. Activists, you know, dissidents, we would suggest that depending on what the game plan is, shareholders need to look at strategy on strategy. At the end of the day, there's a problem there, there's a disconnect, the company hasn't been performing. Does Ackman have the better plan, or does the incumbent board have the better plan? That's what shareholders have to decide.
All right. Great to have you here, Brad.
Thanks a lot, Amanda.
Brad Allen, Senior VP, Laurel Hill Advisory Group. And now it is time to zip around the globe for our World Wrap.